going to be taken by Paromita Vohra. She's a filmmaker and writer who focuses on gender, feminism, love, desire, and popular culture through forms including documentaries, fiction, print video, and sound installation. Some of her films include Morality TV and The Loving Jihad, and A Woman's Place. She's also written the internationally released Pakistani film Khamosh Pani. Her writings have been published in various anthologies like Bombay Meri Jaan, Writings on Mumbai, and First Proof. And she's also published in various journals like Science, Bioscope, Tehelka, and Vogue. She also writes weekly columns in the Sunday Midday and Mumbai Mirror, and is currently working on a multimedia digital project on love, sex, and desire called www.agentsofishq.com. It's an honor for us to have her here today, and we'd like to extend a very warm welcome.
So thank you. It's always nice to be here. I've been coming for years, but coming after a long gap because of not making a film for a long time. But I've actually also premiered some of my films here, so I've got a soft spot for KRVIA. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about being a filmmaker who tries to do something in a new medium, which turns out not to be such a new medium, talking about things which have interested me for a long time. But so I'm going to talk about this project which I work on called Agents of Ishq, and it's a web-based project. So everything in the project is apparently digital and apparently online, but all of it is not. So I'm going to talk about some of those things. Has anybody ever seen this site or heard of it at all? One or two. Mostly girls, right? So anyway, Agents of Ishq is a project about sex. That is what it's basically about. And the reason that we started it, so all my work in some way or the other has talked about love, desire, sex, but not in isolation, because I think it's kind of difficult to talk about these things as if they're separate from the rest of life. And what I do find, for me, the idea of love and desire is very important metaphorically. And it appears really as a metaphor in my work, because like whether I'm making a film about copyright issues or I'm making a film about feminism, the idea of desire as a metaphor and a concern is very strong in it. And the reason for that is that I feel when we talk about politics, we kind of get stuck in a schema, you know. So many people have already defined for us how we should talk about politics. If you want to look political, you have to hate certain ways of thinking, you have to speak about certain people in certain ways, and you have to look political by wearing certain clothes, wearing certain expressions, whether in your work or in your person. Right? So that means you're not really thinking very hard about what you're talking about. You just have to take them on a manner, and then you can be liberal or right wing or left wing or whatever. So in a way, when you want to say that, and when we work like that as artists, if we work with a schema, then we're not actually helping ourselves or people around us to think about things differently. We keep wanting people to think differently. But if we ourselves don't offer a manner by which we can think differently, that's hard for other people. And I do think that one of the strengths of art is that it allows us to take what is still happening, right? Because sometimes a change doesn't happen overnight, we know that. We begin noticing change in small ways. You begin, as architects and urban planners, you might notice small changes like the kind of lettering on auto rickshaws starts changing. Or, I don't know if people have noticed, but lately I see a lot of auto rickshaws with signs like Brahmin or some caste-oriented type of title. I don't know why that is, right? But I see it as I'm passing by, and one way is to react and say, oh my God, people are really asserting their caste, and look at what's happening to the country, it's getting so polarized, and that's maybe true, but maybe there's something else. So until you go out there and you find out what that change means, it's really hard, I think, to take a position. And you may find that some of what you assumed, yes, the idea of caste has become very central to the discourse, is true, but you may also find there are other things that are going on. Right? So in a way, these little things that we notice as artists, we are able to gather them and join them into some kind of a narrative without having to make it very hard-edged. And I feel that is the great advantage of art, that it allows the thing which is what academics like to call liminal, still forming, still becoming, and try to find a way to understand it without imposing too much of a significance and meaning on it. So the non-verbal space, the space of sense impression, all of these are the things that art can take data from, right? The data of art is in a sense the data that our senses give us. So I feel that when we talk about love and desire, it gives us a metaphor which is not a template. love is the one thing, it's a relationship that cannot be predefined. Every love relationship is kind of a type, but it's also unique because 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 people who are in that love relationship are figuring out between themselves what is the nature of the relationship, right? So it's always customized, so to speak. And it allows us, therefore, to think about the world of ethics rather than the world of morality. Because morality is about absolutes and ethics is about actually thinking through the ideas of equality, justice, fairness, self-expression, identity, all of those things. It allows us that space. And that's why I kind of find it a beautiful way to talk about very complex, cerebral things in a way that connects them to everyday life. Because we all understand this. We all understand the meaning of the senses. Anyway, so that's how I've been using it in my work. And I'm also very interested in how people live out their love lives at a totally ordinary level. I like to hear about people's love lives, what they think about love and sex, what's going on. And I feel that also tells you something kind of fantastic about how the world is changing, right? Because on the one hand, what's the favorite thing people say about Indians? Indians are so repressed. But it's also true that there's like a huge market growing, say, for sex toys in small town India. So how do you square the idea that Indians are repressed with that fact? Is it true that Indians are repressed? What do you think? What do you feel? Do you think Indians are repressed? Okay, do you think India has a repressive culture? What do you think?
We don't really express the love or the sexual contents and all that, but really express it out.
So
We do it. I don't think it's repressed.
Hmm.
Everything is happening.
Hmm.
It's happening everywhere. It's
Hmm.
not like it's not happening or it's not there.
Hmm.
But it's not freely communicated.
So we'll say that we're not comfortable discussing sex openly. Would you agree with that? How many people agree? Put your hands up. Okay, the majority of the room, well, about 60% of the room, right? How many, the people who don't feel it, so what do you feel? Do you feel people are expressive? What do you feel?
There
There
are
were many?
sections and pockets of societies which are able to express it freely
Right.
than the others.
And there are certain pockets in which you will feel comfortable discussing, like with certain people.
So what you're basically saying, both of you are saying in different ways, are actually two things. One is there is no one type of Indian, right? There are many different types of Indians. So different Indians have different experiences in their personal and intimate lives. Some sections of people are very repressed and some people are not. And that is something that is partly determined by their socio-cultural and economic identity. On the other hand, you're saying, which I also agree with, I agree with both these things, that sometimes you are, you hold back a part of you in some contexts, and in some contexts you express it very freely. So what you're also saying that every Indian is not one type of Indian. Every Indian may be 2 or 3 types of Indian, right? So the thing is that, yes, at a very general level, it's not untrue that we're not a culture that feels very routinely about talking about sex. It's true. But it's also true that there are many, many threads and elements of our culture which are sexual, which are expressive. People are having all kinds of relationships. And I don't mean only, like the one thing, I think one of the reasons why I started making Agents of Ishq is because people always like to say, India is the land of the Kama Sutra. I'm like, Arey yaar, Kama Sutra? I mean, 3rd century BC or whatever it was for AD, whenever it was written. It's like, it's not that India is not the land of the Kama Sutra, but the truth is India is not only the land of the Kama Sutra. Hundreds of erotic texts have been written in India. So anybody who says India is the land of the Kama Sutra actually knows nothing about India's sexual heritage. You can be pretty sure. उन लोगों को एक किताब मिल गया and they're like, we know all about Indian sexual heritage. Right? So like basically the same guy who wrote Windows for Dummies kind of wrote the Kama Sutra. It's like a nerd's manual of sex, or rather it's for very upper class. For some reason there was a deep identification in the class. But it's a kind of, it was meant for a certain section of society only. At the same time that the Kama Sutra was written, for example, you have a kind of poetry written in the working people's language which is highly erotic and little bit will make your hair stand on end. It's so explicit, right? So we don't know about these things. That's one thing. But I'm saying that also in day-to-day life, in the contemporary moment, people have all kinds of lives, right? Like for example, I'm just saying that you can't take the face value, anything at face value. So the highest downloaded, one of the highest downloaded apps is Tinder. So fine, everybody got Tinder on their phones. But what they are doing with Tinder, we don't know. right? Just because people have Tinder on their phones doesn't mean that everybody's like hooking up, and having a relationship. There was too much laughter in the room here. A sad kind of laughing through my tears kind of laughter. So the thing is, some people are not sad through their tears. Some of the people who follow us in Agents of Ishq on Twitter now, they're always like, why have you made this poll? You should, like, anytime you make a poll about sexual activity, they're like, what about people like us for whom you should have a not applicable? So the thing is, we have a lot of people like that following us. No sex ed, right? Those videos really irritated. Like, I hated them. The reason I hated them is, they're made by these kind of funny Indian boys, not always boys, right? And it's always like, oh, the teacher's actually reading porn, the teacher's punishing you, but the teacher's actually reading porn. And of course, the teacher can never speak English properly. The teacher's always a small town guy, So it's like what English-speaking dudes who watch a lot of American TV series, they are perfectly liberal, they are all feminists, they are really getting it on, and they know how we should think. And the rest of us who, struggle with body odor, body image, and our accents and English, whatever. The rest of us, like, we don't know anything, we are not really liberal. So I was like, fuck this stuff, we should do something. So, of course, with no real clarity. And I've always found that feeling irritated with something which is pretending to be liberal when it's not really liberal, which is actually reaffirming the older kind of repression, hierarchy, whatever. It's not a bad starting point, but it should not be your final position. That's all. You can start from there, but you have to go somewhere else. So we were like, we should do a project about sex. And so we thought up this project, and we thought it should be on the internet because that's where everything is now. It's not like making a film and all, like, it's not going to be good enough. We should make it right there in the same Maidan where these irritating people are doing things. And so that's how we thought about it. For a very long time, the project was imagined, because I'm a filmmaker, as being a lot of videos. We got some money to start the project from someone, and we didn't have a name, so we used to keep calling it Sex Project, Sex Project, Sex Project. And our office is in a small tenement housing complex, and we didn't have an AC, so we used to sit with the door open, right? And the whole day while doing research would be like, and condoms, and vaginas, but testicles, but something. I don't know, I think all the tenants all shifted house. I don't know what these three women sitting there are doing, but we don't want to be near it. And then every time we'd be like, shh, and then we'd be like, oh my god, have you seen this fantastic project? Like, it's, see, that's an animated penis. And then I'd be like, so basically the research for the project involved that we looked at everything else that was already out there, not Indian alone, although there are a few sites in India. And we looked at stuff abroad and things that other people were doing around sex education. We wanted to do something that was kind of sex ed-y, but not only sex ed, right? Like, that was our vague thought in the beginning. So the method that we followed, the idea, the way we came up with the name, Agents of Ishq, was while we were sitting and racking our brains, and I was like, it should be Ishq, because Ishq combines, like, we knew some thoughts, like, we knew that we didn't want to make a separation between love and sex. We didn't want to say love is better than sex, or love and sex are different, but like have them on a continuum. And our secret motto is all sex is love and all love is sex. And we felt that Ishq is a good word because it's really a word for desire, and it kind of combines the idea of love and sex rather than separating them into two pockets and two emotions. Then we were like, we should have the Ishq project. We were going to call it the Great Indian Ishq Project, and that's because it was going to be an acronym for Indian Sex Headquarters. And we were quite pleased with ourselves. We were like, oh, Indian Sex Headquarters, and there'll be agents everywhere. And then we were like, actually, it should be Agents of Ishq. That should be the name, because it has the idea of agency, which is what we're getting at, without that really boring NGO feeling of the word agency in agents, because it sounds more like, spies, that kind of thing. So that's how we came up with the name, and thankfully it was a very easy domain name to get also, all of that. When we started doing the research, we realized also that making videos was actually not going to be enough as a form, because there are it's very difficult to talk about sex openly, right? So what do you get? You get either, I don't know if anybody has watched all these videos online, which you see in that, roughly that being Indian type of video format, right? Where you interview different people. Sometimes when I used to watch them, aate jate, and I'd be like, wow, people have become really bold, it's so impressive. But when I really started to watch for research purposes, girls, what is your favorite sexual position? I'd be like, really? Do people have only one? And is it like a permanent thing? Like I always have my coffee with milk, like that, right? And you know, like everything I would read would start making me feel like, oh, I don't think I know anything about sex. I don't think I should be doing this project ever for. And they'd be like, I really like it doggy style. You know, I think this girl is lying. This girl has never had sex. So basically, when I would watch the videos, I would feel like two things. One is that people were just making up things to sound cool, or saying what they think they should say. People were saying a lot of things that are basically influenced by what they know from pornography, not from their own experience. And then some of it was just made, like fake. That's what I felt. And then I was like, but it's true. If somebody came and asked me to talk about my sex life, I'm not sure I would do it in a big hurry on video. So if I'm not willing to do it, can I really ask other people to do it? Because I think it'll make a cool video. I don't know about that, no? So what should we do instead? Anyway, we started also going and sitting in a lot of sex education classes. That's not a lot in the country. There are very few people doing sex ed, but there are people doing sex ed. Some of these people are really pretty cool. There are some adolescent health and sexuality programs in the country which are great. And I'm going to show you something we did with one of them shortly. And we saw that people had zero materials. Like people were teaching sex ed and children were feeling sleepy in the sex ed class. Then we also found, like in one place, they wanted to talk about sexual attraction. It's very normal to feel sexual attraction as you are growing up. And so they were using a scene from the Blue Lagoon. Like when the children grow up and they understand what the Blue Lagoon is really about, they're going to need a lot of therapy, man. So like why, some American film which is with white kids in it also becomes very difficult to relate to if you're a kid in Dharavi, frankly speaking. It's also just that. So we, at the end of a 6-month period of research, where we basically talked to a lot of people, we did some workshops in colleges, we tried to understand what people might need or want from a project like this. What we came up with was that we want to do a project which creates materials that people can use for sex ed, which creates materials that older people and younger people are not very embarrassed to watch together. That if you're a parent or an older sibling, you won't feel so uneasy saying, hey, go to this website. But it should not be boring. It should not be like teacher type thing. At the same time, a parallel thing that's happening is what we discussed before. People are pretending to be cooler about sex than they really are. They actually don't know things. In one workshop, when we asked kids to name sexually transmitted diseases, people were saying typhoid, pneumonia, which can be transmitted through sex, but they are not primarily sexually transmitted diseases. So because why is that? Because we never talk about any other disease or infection except AIDS, right? So we don't think of anything else, and we found that something that was happening a lot in heterosexual sex and maybe in gay sex was that men refused to use condoms. And girls felt that they can't force them and it's so awkward and what do you do, whatever. So there was like all these issues that were coming up, but the primary thing, we would ask people questions and they would reply in the class. And then we would ask them to write anonymous answers on chips, which would be the opposite of what people had said in class. So we also realized there's a lot of things people don't feel comfortable saying openly that need to be discussed. And we need to give a way for people to come and be in this space without forcing them to have to speak up and say something if they don't want to. So these were the kind of twin agendas of the project, kind of looking at sexual culture, sex education, and the last piece was sexual etiquette. If you are sexual, how are you to be sexual with each other? What does it mean to be a sexual person as a way in the world? What's the social etiquette of being a sexual person? So that's also something we don't know. We are still learning it, right? So these are the three things. The site is only 6 months old, so there's still a lot of stuff to do. We launched with, what we wanted to do also was not make stuff like it is on the internet now, which is very rough and ready, very off the template, because we felt that if it's a beautiful environment and a very, like an artisanal environment, it also creates a sense of beauty around the idea of sex instead of being clinical or whatever. So the aesthetic is very handmade. Each post was separately designed, which you will find if you work on the web that it's difficult to do now because everything comes in a template. So how do you break that template? It's really a task. this is basically what I said for so long. Actually, it's the first time in my life I've made a PowerPoint. So that's our like subheading. We give sex a good name. This is how we wanted to, what I told you about the tone and the aesthetic. The tone is very like friendly. One of the things we don't really do much on Agents of Ishq, we don't critique so much of stuff we don't like. We talk about things that we do like more than things that we don't like. So we don't get our jollies from saying everybody else in India is so repressed and moralistic. We also don't like to make fun of people or say any one way is a good way to be. Because I don't think we believe it. We don't think monogamy is better than polyamory or polyamory is better than monogamy, right? There are two different choices that people make. This was as, okay, so that's our landing page. The landing page has been made by many people also. Every drawing was made by somebody else. In fact, these two drawings didn't have clothes when we got them. So we made clothes on them to make them look different. Another thing like a task we didn't want to make everything heterosexual. It's such a default, right? So also to make not very gender specific bodies sometimes and all of that which you have to think about a lot in the aesthetic. And that's the home page. So basically, these are just sliding posts. You can click on a post and we have a feature thing. And then we keep changing this question where it says just asking. And different people write whatever they feel. You can come on and you can put becomes a big word cloud if you click inside it. And people say some pretty nice things. The questions we've had have been, what makes you feel sexy? What do you wish you had known before the first time you had sex? And one more, I think this is the fourth question we've had. What are the 5 words you think of when you think of sex? Yeah. Somebody wrote Rakhi Sawant. So, there are all kinds of people in the world. Yeah. So these are different type of posts we have, right? So a lot of our posts would be like, especially it was hard, like if you want to tell people about STIs and contraception, how do you do it, right? So we made a kind of like a Tinder interface type thing for different contraceptives. So for dilbar contraception, how do you find the contraceptive that's perfect for you? Because people also needed to know that. Like people don't know that you choose contraception depending on what it is what your particular sexual needs are. If you're trying to get pregnant, if you're trying to have sex. Like sex is about contraception as well as protection. I mean, safe sex. It's about contraception as well as protection. So one thing, so these are the 4 sections on the website right now, though we are changing them. Which are also roughly the sections I told you about. That's how the contraceptive thing looks. Right, with the pros and cons of each method. Okay, this is a character we have called Munna the Singing Condom. Where if we get more money, we want to make an animation film with him, but basically he answers with a song any question you have about whether or not you need to use a condom, depending on your requirements. This was a very successful post of ours on masturbation myths, where we use these kind of pop culture characters like old advertising, retro type of look, and had all these different. This is my favorite one of them. Can I change? Still reading? So we've converted these into films now. Next month we'll launch the films. So we started a section which we haven't been able to follow up much about laws to do with the body. So our first one was on age of consent. It is good for you to go and read that post, just so you know. Okay, that's what happens when you put in the words in the word cloud, right? In the question cloud, sorry. Okay, so an unexpected thing happened to us. We launched with 5 posts. A post which I can't show you, but I really wish you'll go and see it on the site. Was something we took very long to do and we were very excited about it. So the writer Devdutt Patnaik, who's a mythologist, had written a very beautiful story about how the first time his mother came to his house, she had refused to come to his house because he's gay. And so when she came to his house first, how he felt about it. So we took the story and we broke it up into different cards, and each card had an animated image on it. So it was like a moving illustration storybook, and you would just click from page to page and read it. And we loved that. That was also a very popular post for us. Now, actually, these things are very labor intensive, and you can do them very quickly on the net today without having to put so much pain into it. But I really, really, really believe from the bottom of my heart that if you make things beautiful, you change the way people think. I think if you don't put that love and care into making something, you're not communicating what you want to communicate with love and care. And that has some kind of meaning. It's not enough to give people information. You also have to give them an aesthetic and an emotion that goes with it for that information to be meaningful, right? So once we had put out this stuff, like we started, and we had a resource section, so people, 5 books you can give your kids. Like when we were growing up, we didn't have any books about Indian kids having crushes and Indian kids being gay to no chance, you know, all of that. But now there are, I mean, now there are books. So but it's just that people don't commonly know about them. So getting books, making lists of books, like we have a post coming up which is a list of sex ed sites which are in Urdu. So trying to also gather resources to give people. A lot of the stuff in the site is also in Hindi. One of the things that began happening that we never imagined would happen and which now takes up most of our time is that people began writing to us saying, I also want to contribute something. So suddenly we have all these people sending their stories, sending their writing, and it's really pretty fantastic. Now everybody keeps asking us, how come the contributions you get on Agents of Ishq are so good in quality? And this is what I really believe, that before you seek something from somebody, you have to give them something. I think because we put so much care into the things we made, and we made a kind of gesture and an offering to the world, people understood what the nature of the space is, what they could talk about there, and they just started sending in their pieces. One of our most successful posts, which was republished numerously, is called Secret Diary of an Indian Sex Educator. It was about a woman who was teaching sex ed in schools and her experiences there. We have a great piece called The Flower of My Secret about a young woman's journey into discovering erotic writing and masturbation and whatever, who does not believe in premarital sex and what that is saying to her about her sexual journey. It was a really great piece. We got beautiful sets of artwork from people. Orijit, you all know Orijit Sen? You all know who he is? He did a nice piece for us on how he sees the difference between pornography and erotica. So there was people writing to us all this great stuff. And another section which we began on the site, which had not initially been intended, were podcasts. So we are repackaging our podcasts, and they're going to be called Love, Sex or India. But basically it's just people telling us stories from their love and sex lives. And they're really, I mean, they're amazing, because the kind of things people will tell you when it's audio and they're anonymous are surprising, and sometimes they confirm some assumptions you have about society, but most of the time they don't. And most of the time you see how beautifully something hot and something sweet can coexist. You know, that feeling of sexiness and the feeling of tenderness are there together. And from men, women, straight, gay, everything, it's not like that is the thing that you see across everything that emerges. And of course, the last thing we did was film. Okay, so this is the story, how we did with the story, but actually like this body comes out of that body. You should go and see the poster, it's very nice. We repackaged one, If Rani Mukherjee Were My Girlfriend, was a lesbian fantasy in this kind of old-fashioned book. And we made 2 films. I'm going to show you bits of them. I play this? No, no. So this film, May or Meri Body, no, ma'am. Yeah, Final Master. Yeah. This we made with the kids from the adolescent sexuality program in Sneha, which is an organization in Dharavi. So they acted in the film. टमाटर गाजर ले लो देख के नहीं चल सकता वो मौसी ज्यादा स्टाइल मारने का नहीं काय को मेरा वीडियो है तेरा वीडियो है तो नाम तो बताता हूँ ना बता ना फिर मेरा वीडियो का नाम अबे चुप ये मेरी बॉडी है ये मेरी बॉडी है मेरी बॉडी ये ना सबकी बॉडी है इसे कहते हैं क्रोमोसोम क्रोमोसोम जब तुमने गया
होता है 46 क्रोमोसोम, 33 पापा के और 33 मम्मा के। साल की शुरुआत क्रोमोसोम से ही होती है। पापा के बॉडी में एक चीज बनता है जिसका नाम है स्पर्म। मैं तो रोज करता हूँ। स्पर्म नहीं, स्पर्म, स्पर्म, SPERM। हाँ, याद आया, स्कूल में बताया था ना, मम्मा का बॉडी में होता है अंडा। पापा और मम्मी का शरीर बोले तो बॉडी मिलता है ना। सबकी बॉडी है। अरे बोलता हूँ, रुकना डार्लिंग। पहले 8 वीक्स तक सबकी बॉडी एक जैसे होती है, उसे एम्ब्रियो बोलते हैं। उसके बाद क्रोमोसोम के अलग-अलग कॉम्बिनेशन होने से अलग टाइप के बेबीज बनने लगते हैं।
और बच्ची क्या चल रहा है?
वीडियो है, मालूम नहीं, मैं और मेरी बॉडी।
ऐसा है?
टिंग टॉन्ग, मैं तुम्हें एक इंटरेस्टिंग बात बताऊं?
ये बनता है, बताना वीर, बताना बताना।
अंडा सिर्फ अंडा होता है। इसमें जो क्रोमोसोम होता है उसे एक्स क्रोमोसोम कहते हैं। आंखें खोलो बाबा। पापा का जो स्पर्म होता है उसमें कभी एक्स क्रोमोसोम, कभी वाई क्रोमोसोम और कभी-कभी एक्स एंड वाई क्रोमोसोम भी होते हैं। ना पापा? हाँ बालिके। अगर चुने जाने वाला स्पर्म का क्रोमोसोम एक्स होता है तो एक्स प्लस एक्स मिलकर बनती है लड़की। और अगर सिलेक्ट होने वाला क्रोमोसोम वाई होता है तो एक्स प्लस वाई मिलकर बनता है लड़का।
बोले तो पापा के क्रोमोसोम से पता चलता है कि लड़का और लड़की क्या?
फिर क्या, देखा नहीं क्या वीडियो में? और अगर स्पर्म एक्स प्लस वाई हो गया तो क्या, थोड़ा लड़का थोड़ा लड़की, उसे कहते हैं इंटरसेक्स।
ये क्या चल रही है? अपने कुछ पल्ले नहीं बढ़ेला।
मैं ध्यान देता तो सब समझ में आता।
ये बच्ची स्कूल में ये सब नहीं सिखाते।
अरे यार ये बता कि ये क्या है?
बोले तो
ये है इंद्रधनुष।
यस, इंद्रधनुष, रैम्बो।
ये है शरीर का इंद्रधनुष। शरीर मेल या फीमेल या दोनों का मिक्सचर हो सकता है। सबका शरीर अलग-अलग होता है। ये है क्रोमोसोम का कमाल। हम जो भी है हमको इसी से करते हैं। हाँ।
ये लड़की क्रोमोसोम क्या करती है? मेरे बारे में कब बताएगी?
तू कौन है?
मैं तेरा
वो तो ठीक है, पर तू है कौन?
टेस्ट पोस्ट करो। हाँ तो नहीं होगा ना।
एक्टर है।
I'm not showing you the whole film. Please go and see it online. Yeah, see the entry of progesterone and estrogen and what happens. So this film was a hit. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people are using it. I think our main contribution of the film, besides the fact that it's pretty entertaining, is that you actually know how the sperm reaches the egg. So you're not confused when you come out of that. But a lot of people, like, there was no Indian film that's not clinical, which you could show to young people. And I think, like, in that sense, we're happy that we had not initially intended to make such kinds of films, right? But we felt it was really needed, which is why we made it. The animation in the film was done by, you all know Geetanjali Rao? Yeah. So Geeta did the animation in the film. So I think it's also important you bring like the best talent you can bring together in a project so that people can get something really good instead of getting something like little half-baked and they don't take interest in it. The next film we made, so we wanted to make a film about consent because consent is a very important part of love, sex and life. And because we really hate that film which is consent is like a cup of tea. That post gets shared at least once a week, right? That's what's just been discovered. And what we felt was consent is not like a cup of tea. Consent is much more complicated. Consent is not just yes means yes and no means no. The consent is also about what to do when you feel maybe. Actually, that's where a lot of the gadbad happens also, right? Like I feel like maybe I'm interested in this person, but then my maybe is construed as yes. And then I feel like, well, but I kind of said maybe, so am I leading this person on? So there are all these complexities that happen between human beings that don't get encompassed in the conversation about consent. And then it becomes kind of useless, right? Like it's very easy to say in front of everybody in a politically correct way what consent is while doing some kachra in your own life, as we have seen more and more often. So we made this film on consent, but we were like, how should we make it? And then I was lucky enough to watch this performance of Lavani, which had been done by one of my former colleagues, Savitri Medhatul, and it was like an amazing experience. So if they do a performance, I know that they did a workshop here last year, right? Yeah. So we made this film on consent with them, but this film I'll show you the whole because it's very entertaining. So for Lavani about consent.
मातेला हातांड मीही अशी बाई कधी भेट सखा झाली मला घाई काय करू कुठं जाऊ काही सुधरणाच काही जो बी येतो त्याला म्हणते मी नको नाही अगं पण का
कन्सेंट म्हणजे काय रोकडा वाटला व्हाय दिसलं तर हाय नसलं तर नाही असं समजायचं का
समज कसं नाजूकच आहे बघ
हो ना
नाजूक बी आणि अवघड बी
हे जर पुरुषाला समजलं असतं किती मजा वाटली असती. हा पाहुणा कुठून तरी आला भुलला माझ्या गोऱ्या अंगाला मी म्हणले करू नको थाट अशी लावली काही कांची वाट मोठ्या मोठ्यांची
अगं पण का
कारण त्यांना हो वाईट माझा कळाला त्यांना हो वाईट माझा कळाला त्यांना वाईट माझा कळाला त्यांना हो वाईट माझा कळाला वाईटांना हो वाईट माझा कळाला वाईटांना हो वाईट माझा कळाला मी हसून ग त्याला कन्सेप्ट देऊन टाकली मी हसून ग त्याला कन्सेप्ट देऊन टाकली मी हसून ग त्याला कन्सेप्ट देऊन टाकली त्यांना हो point माझा कळना, बाई त्यांना हो point माझा कळना, बाई त्यांना हो point माझा कळना, त्यांना हो point माझा कळना. अगं पण माझ्या बरोबर तो उलटच झालंय. माझ्या हिरोने नेलं सिनेमाला, नेलं सिनेमाला. तिथे एसीची थंडगार हवा, गार गार हवा. त्याचा हात जणू तापता तवा, तापता तवा. अंधार होताच जवळ ओढली, अंधार होताच जवळ ओढली, ओढली, ओढली. लाज लाजून मनात करंजी फुटली, लाज लाजून मनात करंजी फुटली, लाज लाजून मनात करंजी फुटली. तोंड टेकलं म्हटलं सोड मला. आ? ऐकून तो बाजूलाच झाला. आ? असं पण त्याला अगं पण त्याला कळलंय ना तुझं पॉईंट. तूच नाही म्हणालीस. हा पण मनात होत ना. मग नाही का म्हणालीस? अगं मी म्हणले असते हो तर म्हणलं असतं चालू. नाही नाही करशील तर येईल दुसरी मालो. म्हणून सांगते, जेव्हा म्हणायचं हो तेव्हा हो, नको ते नको. पण आपली आपल्यालाच खात्री नसते तेव्हा. कधी वाटतं हो कधी वाटतं नाही, तेव्हा काय करायचं ग? मे बी पण ते पुरुषांना कुठं समजतंय. ज्याला समजतं तो हिरो, नाही समजलं तर झिरो.
I've learned a heck of a lot in the last 6 months, and it's kind of a fantastic world that opens up. But at the same time, what I have learned is that it's a lot like making a film, right? But it's just like, how many people watch MasterChef? So you know on MasterChef you always have these deconstructed desserts. It's a deconstructed pizza, it's a deconstructed. So a website has been like a deconstructed film, right? It's a film opened out because there is a narrative to the whole website. There has to be a central idea and a personality, and most importantly a voice to the whole website. It can't be without that voice in this kind of a project. And I would say almost any kind of a project. And there are many different media elements. But there has to be a certain balance between those elements and how they appear on the site. So the site itself, you have to continuously think of it in toto. You can't only think of separate things. Very quickly again, one of the challenges, the difficulties of being on the internet at this particular moment especially, is that the internet has suddenly in 6 or 10 months or something become a highly commercialized space in India, you know. So you have to struggle against the pressure to fall for this virality idea. You know? And you have to struggle with it because what is called a viral video, it's not viral, it's like chemical warfare, it's fully pushed, promoted. When you start understanding how the algorithms work on Facebook or on the internet generally to prevent people from seeing things, how do you work with that kind of a commercial space, not being a hardcore commercial project, but still wanting to reach as many people as you possibly can, because that's one of the pleasures of the internet, that you can reach an audience which you would not otherwise reach easily, right? These are all different sorts of things which when you're a small project of this type, you really have to think about like every day and find new solutions to every day. And most of all, like with every other work that you do, you have to remember, or at least I feel I have to remember how to be popular in a true sense, not in a false sense, which is communicate with people in a language that they enjoy, that is pleasurable, but that is not dumbed down. But that should be pleasurable, that should be lucid, that should not be normative. All of those things have to be done, but not fall into that pressure of numbers. it's very, very tempting, right? Because everything on the internet today, as opposed to how it was even 2 years ago, has become about, oh my god, I had 4 million hits, oh my god, it had 2 million hits. So if you've had 60,000 hits, it's a very good number actually. You might start to feel, we are failures, oh my god, we are losers, we cannot compete with AIB. And isn't that a fantastic thing? Not to have to compete with the crassness of AIB. So actually you have to see it as a kind of liberation, that you are not doing that. What you're actually doing is going to the internet and keeping a kind of indie space going there, which is becoming unfashionable, but need not be, right? So I remember when we were starting, this happens to me a lot because I choose supposedly very boring topics to work on, right? They always sound very sarkari, whatever I'm doing. Like I made a film about public toilets, which maybe for architecture and urban planning students is exciting, but for the rest of the world was like, what are you working on now, Paro? I'm making a film on public toilets. Oh, okay. Because that sounds really boring, right? So similarly, what are you doing now? Making a project on sex ed and things like that. Everybody's eyes would glaze over, right? Because they think it's a boring topic. So the thing is that when the website came out and people loved it and people were like, wow, this is so cool, we didn't know it would be this way. I think that's an important thing to do. It's important to make a beautiful thing, an independent spirited thing, and put it in the mainstream world. And in a way, the internet allows you to do that much more than other forms currently do. So I feel it's worth pushing, making a bid. I think that a lot of people in the world feel that way because a number of people who have worked on the site for no money at all or just like a naam ke vaste payment and enjoyed doing it and felt happy that they could do nice work and it could reach other people. It's kind of great because you are also on a website because you work with so many different types of people. You're able to create a space where you respect other people's thinking but also their artistic abilities, right? So that is a nice, warm kind of space to be in. And I think another thing about Agents of Wish that has been nice for us to do, which we love about it and want to make stronger, better, is that it's totally desi. It's not westernized, you know. I mean, it's urban. It's definitely an urban kind of platform, but it was very important to us to be Indian without being traditional, right? Like without having some Apsara photo, one more photo of Khajuraho to say India is the land of the Kama Sutra. To not have that kind of tradition, but to have something which is contemporary and desi, which people can relate to as a language. And by that I don't just mean the Hindi-English mixing thing, but even visually, even with like using the Lavani, which is fantastic, it's very sexy, it's very much fun, and it's very, very desi, so it kind of captures the flavor and rhythm of our lives as we know it in some ways, right, without having to underline that. So yeah. So that is our journey so far on Agents of Wish. We are currently redesigning the site because we learned a lot of new things about websites which we didn't know before. And we are very open to people contributing to it in any way. So if any of you feel like writing, doing a podcast, doing a little art project, something, please write to us.
Thank you very much for that. That was much needed. I'm very sure that we had a lot of followers to your site today. So yeah, I think that was really one of, it will make into our personal favorite encounter. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.